You're listening to Literally First Class, the podcast for female founders behind multi-million-dollar brands and businesses. I'm your host, Keri Ford, creative director turned 3-time award-winning coach, real estate investor, mom, and the one-on-one private advisor for multi-7- and 8-figure firms. If you're ready to make your next million, expand your impact, and lead with even more confidence, you're in the right place. Let's take your life and business first class.
Maybe this is the episode I was meant to record a while back that got deleted. Actually, it was completely muted despite my mic being plugged in. And I was like, I guess this just isn't the time to share this story. So rewind all the way back to 2018. Now, mind you, up until this point, I had very little exposure to the church, God, religion. And I would even use religion in quotes because my experience at church was basically vacation Bible school, going to my aunt's church for Easter service maybe once for my cousin's communion, and saying grace at the table with, I don't know, specific family friends or just friends' households. And when I tell you that I resisted God in every possible way, I resisted God in every possible way. I, in fact, would on purpose not clasp my hands anytime someone said grace at a table. I felt awkward about it. I rebelled and resisted anything I thought I knew was God, religion, etc. So 2018, I am going through a divorce, and I remember this one specific moment where I was in my apartment, which I called my healing lily pad, because it was really a transitional space that I just cocooned and became hungry for healing. Honestly, it was the start of this iteration of my company that you see now. I'm not new to entrepreneurship. I'm not new to the corporate world and leadership. I've had many different types of ways that this has, come into my life, and I'm just a natural born leader. I always have been. And I'm going through this. At the time, I didn't know what the fuck it was. I'll be honest with you. I'm going through this spiritual awakening, and nothing is making sense. And those of you that have gone through a spiritual awakening, or if you're in one right now, you're nodding and you're like, yep, I know exactly what you mean. It's like your world as you know it is falling apart, and there's also this whole other world that exists that you had no idea was there. I mean, the world of personal development was an example. The world of somatic healing, which I am now a trauma-trained practitioner in. Like, all of those things, I didn't even know existed. I didn't know you could rewire your mind. I didn't know you could change your belief systems. I didn't know what codependency was. I didn't know attachment theory. I had never heard of inner child healing. Nothing. I think I'd been to 2 therapy sessions ever. Anyway, I'm in my apartment, and I'm in so much emotional pain, it feels physical. And I'm thinking, the fuck am I doing? I'm in my apartment. I've just given up this house, this life that I've known, this marriage, everything. And my life was now a 180. I knew I was supposed to leave the consulting job that I was at, that I had really fast success with, that I actually really loved too. I was in this apartment, and I'm just looking around, and I'm like, I don't recognize any of this. It was just a lot of change all at once. And not to mention, I'm living on my own for the first time ever in my life. Not to mention with 2 small children, one of which who is in diapers. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And all I know is that I suddenly heard a voice. I was on my knees in guttural pain. Pain so deep and so dark. I can see myself in my bathroom, my master bathroom, on my knees, just crying out. In pain, crying. And I hear a voice, and it says, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, what? Nobody's in my apartment. The kids are with their dad. I am alone in my dark bathroom on my knees. It's probably 8, 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, am I going crazy? I hear it again. It's going to be okay. And it's kind of like in my head, and at the same time, I can audibly hear it, if that makes sense. And I'm like, I mean, I stopped crying immediately. The pain goes away, and I'm like, okay. And for whatever reason, I just needed to believe that voice. And that's the voice that I came to know as God. And that was the start of so many things in my life, so much goodness. I started listening to church online. Buckhead Church is really big here with Andy Stanley in Atlanta, Georgia. And a friend of mine introduced me to Buckhead Church, but I was really nervous and embarrassed and not quite sure if I should go to church. It was like I had this story that I don't belong at church because I've never been to church and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to church. I don't know how to do this. I've never read the Bible. And who am I to go to church? So I start watching messages online, which is basically like the sermons on my phone. And if you've ever listened to Buckhead Church, or maybe you've been to more of a Reformed church before, it's more of a big mega church. They start with music. And I fell in love with the music because another thing you may not know about me is I grew up doing all sorts of performance arts. I've always loved the stage. I've loved performing. So it was first dance, gymnastics, point ballet. And I also fell in love with singing. I did musical choir. I did a cappella, baker's dozen, regional choir. I mean, I sang the national anthem at our high school basketball games, did talent shows. I have always loved performing. And singing is a deep passion of mine. I can't say I'm I'm not Mariah Carey. I certainly can carry a pitch-ish. I have more of an indie style in terms of what I am attracted to listening to and emulate. Like it's all that, like the Cranberries, again, completely unexpected, I'm sure. And, Lisa Loeb, and I think of Alanis Morissette and all of the feminist movement that I played in my bedroom as an angsty teen. And I loved that music. And anyway, I love singing. I love music. It really speaks to me. And so I fell in love with the worship music, and I would always look forward to that at the beginning of the message. And so as I'm listening to the message and finishing out the sermon this one particular day, and I remember the exact date because it was my dad's birthday, my nephew's birthday, and it was August 26th. And that was the day I can tell you I was saved. And it was crazy because as I started listening to these sermons, you get to know the cadence and the pastor and the message. And they always start the sermon with music, but they never end it with music. It was pretty rare unless it was Christmas or something. And at the end of this particular sermon, a specific song played. And the song was, "Oh, Come to the Altar." And I fucking lost it. I'm listening to the song and my mouth hung open because I couldn't believe the words I was hearing. And the words go like this: "Oh, come to the altar. The Father is waiting with open arms." That's essentially, he's always been waiting with open arms, etc. And I'm like, what? And suddenly I connected the dots that God has always been there in my life. And those of you that have always had a relationship with God, maybe you're laughing right now because you're like, well, duh. But I didn't know this. I was a 34, 35-year-old woman walking around I had no idea there was a relationship with God that I was just choosing to not acknowledge, but was completely there. And this song, it just stopped me dead in my tracks. And I will tell you, in that moment, God found my heart and he filled it. And I have never been the same since. And that was the day that I was saved. A few months later, after consistently listening now to the messages, and then I actually started going to church, I came out to my parents. I had to come out, hey, I'm going to church. They probably thought I lost it. I could tell that they were curious but tolerant, I will say. They both were raised with religion, but they were raised with religion that was shoved down their throat. My dad was Italian Catholic, and he went to private Catholic school, and it was strict, and it's very binary, and it's very sin-based, and right or wrong, black and white. And he didn't love that about the religion. And my mom was raised with very strict Christian Protestant, religion. And that was shoved down her throat in a totally different way. And they both just felt like there was this forceful nature of religion and church. The business of the church, they felt like the church always had their hand out. And, what I've come to realize is that so many people have different experiences of religion and church, and of course, God as a result, or maybe separate, right? So I found God, and yes, that found me through church, but I've also gotten to know God. I don't need to go to church to find him. I don't need to listen to a song to find him, but it is a place where we celebrate him, right? And so I had to come out, I was going to church, which was bizarre because most people come out the other way, like, hey, I've left the church, or I don't believe in God anymore, or whatever. So it was a really powerful unfolding, but it was the only thing that made sense in my life, if I'm being honest with you at the time. Like, I needed something to anchor me. I needed something to believe in, and I seriously believe that God brings us to our knees so that he can meet us there. And I know that moment is why he brought me to my knees in my bathroom, where he's like, it's going to be okay. I needed that. And all I knew was I didn't know what was next, but I could take the first next step in the valley of darkness without seeing a whole staircase. All I could do, and all I could say was, I will say yes, and I will continue to put one foot in front of the other, but that's all I can do today. And that's all I can do today, and the next day, and the next day. And, over time that compounds. And so that's really where my faith journey and my relationship with God started. And the beginning of 2019, I got a tattoo. It's the only tattoo I have. It's an anchor on my wrist. And it symbolizes so much for me. The cross is in the anchor. I just, said that I just shared that I needed something to anchor to. And my birthday is on the 4th of July. And so what a beautiful way to, bring that full circle with my grandparents being in the Navy. And, the anchor is hope for sight of shore ahead for the sailor. And that's all I was doing in that season. I was just hoping for sight of shore ahead. And that's all I had. But let me tell you the training ground that has really produced in me in order to allow some of the magic in my life in the years to follow that occurred. I mean, had I not had that training ground of blind faith in the darkness, faith in nothingness, just knowing it will be okay. I don't know how, but I know that. And all I can do is take the first next step. And when you're venturing into something new, in leadership, in growth, that's all you have sometimes. This crazy, delusional vision, hope for sight of shore ahead. You know the direction you're sailing, but you don't even know when you're going to hit land. And that's where most people lose their footing. I've found that with the cycles of healing, this process, for me at least, has not, it doesn't always become more illuminated. I don't always have all the next steps. I might have a few of them, but I know enough to trust myself and to trust God and to say yes. And so if you're listening to this and maybe this message found you and you're in a season of growth and expansion and in that blind faith space, it's super uncomfortable, but that is the point. It's because that invites you to seek him more. And if you seek him, then you co-create with him. And if he's your co-creator, then you're listening and your posture is restored in the right direction. And I don't mean right or wrong. I mean in the aligned direction. So I sent out a newsletter this morning, and I thought I would share it with you because it got such a loud, amazing response. I mean, I had emails coming in. People were posting in our Facebook group, and they were like, holy shit, this email is incredible. And before I share this email with you and why I wrote it, this is really a coming to where I am. You may have noticed I've changed my Instagram bio to say the Holy High Council. The Holy High Council. And I asked God, why that? This was in the fall. I attended an event that my buddy Taylor Welsh threw. And him and my friend Gabe's, who's the managing partner at Welsh Equities, invited me, and I'm like, I just knew I needed to go. I texted Gabe's and I was like, I don't know why I'm supposed to be at this event. All I know is I'm supposed to be there. I had this dream. Apparently, there's a message I'm supposed to receive. I don't know what it is. And I'll get to the newsletter in a second. And I don't know what it is, but I know I'm supposed to be there. And she was like, come, be my guest. I was like, oh my God, what? Like, this is crazy. So, and it was insane. It didn't make any logical sense for me to be there. And here's why. I was literally hosting one of my Champagne Club events, my dinner events for female founders and investors here in Atlanta, the very next fucking day. Like, what am I doing? What if I get a flat tire? What if my car stalls? What if, and I just had to give energy to like all the ways in which this was going to work out. There's no way God would lead me and provide me this vivid, lucid dream that I was supposed to be at this event while also sabotaging my event. So I just did my mindset work. I did my somatic work, and I kept my energy and my vision on the side of Shorehead because I couldn't give energy to the possibility of like, well, you know, what if I turn around? And because there's a million what ifs that can happen. So if you catch yourself doing the same, it's like, nope, I'm not available for that reality. The only reality I'm available for is knowing that God gave me this dream. I'm going to this event. I'm going to turn around and everything's going to work out perfectly. And I'm going to have this incredible event on the back end. And I did. And it was so cool because Gabe's got to turn around and she got to come to my event. So we get to like come to each other's events. So I go to this event and it must be, there's like 80 people there. Taylor's like, this is the biggest event we've ever done. I think like last year we had 40-ish people. The room is literally doubled. You know, he's working through all his stuff with things. And, you know, it's a lot when you're holding rooms like that. And the title of this event was like Belief Architecture or something. And again, I'm like, it's mid-afternoon. It is around lunchtime. And Taylor's like, so how are you liking it? Like, what are you getting from it? And I was like, yeah, like I'm really, this is amazing. Like, thank you for having me. This is incredible. Like, you're amazing. And we hadn't met in real life yet, but I had been in one of his programs as a guest speaker before. And I also was a little bit confused because he's obviously incredible and he's a super smart human. But I was also confused, like, God, why did you give me this dream? Because I don't know that I haven't had that moment yet where I'm like, oh, this is the message I was supposed to receive in being here. I got a ton of value. I had pages of notes, tons of takeaways, new friendships, people I got to meet in real life that I had never actually like gotten to hug before, but we had been on socials, you know, for years together. And I just hadn't had that moment. And as I'm basically saying that, we end up sitting down and lunch ends. And Taylor gets up and he introduces somebody. And he goes, listen, I wasn't going to do this. This wasn't even in the agenda. And he's pointing to this woman in the back of the room. I've never heard of her. I've never seen her in my life, except for at the mixer the night before, which she showed up like toward the end. But I had no introduction of her. I didn't recognize her face. And he said, listen, I need this person. I need this woman to come up here and speak. This was not part of the agenda. This was not part of, you know, the day, but I've rearranged things to put her, you know, up front here, and you guys just need to hear her speak. And I'm like, interesting. Okay. And, you know, you're always a little bit like, who is this? Like, you're a little bit skeptical because I have zero relational currency around this person. And she's beautiful and she has this very divine queen energy about her. So she gets up in front of the room and she starts talking, and I am just, y'all, I'm entranced. Oh my God. I took more notes in her 30, 45 minutes, I don't know, time disappeared. However long she talked, I took more notes in that time frame than I did probably the whole day. And there was one thing she said. And the one thing she said was the exact reason I was at this event. And it was that I don't see them as nations. I see them as places I'm needed. Oh my God. I lost it. I just lost it. I'm writing the words down and I'm like, oh my God. My body feels like it's on fire in the best of ways. And I'm like, that's the that's the thing I needed to hear, because I had been asking God, like, the Holy High Council, like this just felt, I don't know. I never want to come off like egotistical, like it's about me and I'm this person at the top. Like, but I asked him why, like, why the High Holy Council? Like, what does that even mean? And he said, the message you received is because these are the places that you are needed. There aren't any women doing the work you're doing at the top, where we need it the most, where corruption and power are oftentimes, one and the same. We need people, good people that are in the seat of advisory and counsel to be in those rooms, in those ears. And I just thought, oh my God, what? And I felt peace, but I also felt fear. I mean, you're like, okay, you're asking me to be, this woman in front of the room is literally an apostle, and she is, quite literally called the Mother of Nations. I don't see myself in that capacity. Like, that's not what God is calling me to do. But I know exactly where and what I'm supposed to do now. And it's taken me a couple months to kind of like adjust my sails, if you will, to keep this metaphor of the ship and the sailor and the land ahead and all the things, because I'm like, what does this mean? Like, how? And I already serve some, really influential people. Some people I can't talk about who I serve, right? There's privacy things, public figures. I quite literally can't. But God is calling me to be in these really high places, and it feels a little bit threatening in my nervous system, if I'm being honest. So therein lies the gap, right? And the very work that I do, which is exciting. So I've taken the end of 2024 to sit with this. And the other thing that came as a result of this was preparation. Preparation to be this woman, me, that is the Holy High Council, and what that means. And that means that I have to be my sharpest, at my peak, at the top of my mental game, whatever that means for me. And so at the end of 2024, I made a decision. And the decision was to hire a new CEO. And the new CEO of my company is God. And you're like, what the fuck? How do you hire God as your CEO? Well, I'm learning that. I'm figuring that out. What I know is this, that if my posture is not facing him, in co-creation with him, I am out of alignment. I feel far from myself. I feel disconnected. And I have found that the further I feel from myself, the more I'm seeking input from others, but it's away from myself. And so I don't know if you have found yourself in this seat, but you ever get lost kind of in watching somebody else's unfolding and uprising in their path to success, and you think, well, if I just do it this way or apply their strategy, and then you go to do it, and it either doesn't feel good, and not because you're like unwilling to work hard or you're adverse to, doing tough things, but because it's simply not aligned, and it's not your blueprint. It's not really your soul's essence and expression in the way that is called forth. It's their path to success, which is exciting and amazing. But for whatever reason, those strategies don't ever really seem to work for you, because you're being called to your holy throne, to your holy path. And the only way to make that holy is to invite God into the process. And so I've learned that if I don't have my face in the sun and my posture facing God, right, I don't really have anything at all. What beacon am I following? What am I placing? What am I worshiping, really? I don't want to make money the thing I worship. I want to make my purpose the thing I worship, and the way that God uses me to do that. I want to worship God, right? And restore my posture to him. And if I don't have it there, he's made it pretty clear that he'll take away things that painfully, admittedly, that aren't in that posture. It's not a punishment. It's a redirection. I've asked for this. I have asked to be open to this. I have said and made the promise back in 2018 that I would never go back to sleep again. And there's a cost to that. If you're on any kind of spiritual journey, if you're an entrepreneur, you're on a spiritual journey. But if you're on any type of spiritual journey consciously and you know it, there is a cost because you've got to grieve every identity that you thought you were, every belief system that's held you back from your greatest, most divine unfolding. That's just how it works. There is a letting go as much as there is a receiving. And once you understand that, you can loosen your grip on what it is that you have this death grip on and recognize that God can't give you the thing if your hand is closed. So let it go. And the faster you learn to let it go, the faster you can actually receive everything you want. Because God has planted those desires on your heart. Desire means of the Father. Do you ever see that illustration where I think it's a child holding a teddy bear tightly, and Jesus has a bigger teddy bear behind his back, and he has his hand out, like inviting the child to hand him the teddy bear, but the child looks like resistant to hand it to him. And it's like, if you would just let go of the small teddy bear, you would get the really big fucking teddy bear. So all of that to say, there has been a restoration of posture, and there has been a preparation at play with this not new direction, but refined direction, the sharpening of the axe. And so in the process of hiring a new CEO for my company, what I realized was I needed to tune out some other additional input, right? You can get lost. So I'm going to share with you the 8 things that I do in my daily practice that have helped me hire God as my CEO and keep him there. Like, this is a practice. This is a spiritual muscle and a constant remembering. It's not like he's my CEO and like I'm always like not human and I like am always, doing the things he tells me, because I still question, like, am I crazy or am I really hearing God? Right? You guys know what I mean, where you start developing this relationship with God, and you can hear him. You can literally, you ask a question, immediate answer. Oh man, that was fast. I don't know if I want it to be that fast, because now I have to listen. So sometimes people never ask at all. So these are the things that I do in real time that guide my daily actions, like tangible things that you can do so that you can practice this too if it's something that calls to you. So every morning I spend intentional time with God. This looks different for different people. It's not me finding God, to be clear. God is with me all the time. It's literally impossible to be separate from him, right? That is union consciousness. But in meditation, I find that I am quieter in my own mind of my own thoughts that I can hear, or simply practicing being still. So I like to ask a question in meditation, because one of my gifts is the sight of, the gift of sight. I can see things done in my mind before they're done. I can see things in a future timeline that have occurred and have been created, by me, him, whatever, and I can reverse engineer things from there. I did this with a retreat company that was wildly successful. I was not prepared to hold that success, right? We talk about upper limits a lot on other podcast episodes, but that was an example of me not being able to hold that. And these visions that come to my brain are really beautiful gifts from God. So I always ask, like, what do I need to see? And then I can play it out like a movie, like who's there and what's happening, what do I hear, and what information do I need to know? And I just kind of spend time in that movie that's playing out. So something is usually revealed. Or I might hear words. I don't actually hear the auditory, I hear it in my head, that provide guidance. I'll ask a question in my mind and then I'll get pretty much an immediate answer. It's rare. I don't know that I've ever asked a question I haven't had the answer to. I may not always want to hear the answer, but it's there. Throughout the day, number 2, I pause and ask, what do you want me to do now? So I don't know about you, but I have a lot of things that I'm building this year and creating. based on his guidance, and there's a lot that we're gearing up to do. And I can feel overwhelmed and a little bit scattered or unsure about priorities. So this has been a really big game changer for me when I'm like, okay, hold on. Literally, what do I do right now? Like, what's my next step right now? Oh, like go for a walk. Great. Oh, wait, I need to eat lunch. Awesome. It's like, all right, I get to love myself. So those things, or it's like, okay, write that email, do that podcast, like flush out that landing page, delegate this to your team member. And I'm like, great. I've even used this with like decisions, hiring and firing. Number 3, when fears arrive, and they arise, I intentionally move them out of my body and make space to hear reassurance and encouragement. So I might just ask, like, hey, I need some like proof right now. I need some encouragement. Could you give me some more evidence? Could you like remind me of why I'm doing this again? I just need to like recalibrate to that, right? The anchoring and remembering, a constant thing. I might even like move my body, like go for a walk. That gives me some time and space. I can move through things. I might stretch. I might go do a workout. So literally using my body. Number 4, I ask God for guidance with specific important decisions. I talked about this before, but then the key is you have to take fast action. For whatever reason, I have found, at least with me, I lose a little bit of the courage if I don't take the action fast. But I waste a lot of energy, like unnecessary energy. Like I'm leaking energy. I'm in decision fatigue. I'm doubting, even though I have the guidance. So I'm like, I could eliminate all that the faster I respond. So I'm learning how to be faster and close that gap between hearing his direction and responding, because like I said, the answers are pretty much always immediate, which is kind of annoying and great at the same time. Number 5, prioritizing self-care. This one has been really interesting because he told me this is a big part of preparing. The work I do already with, we have dozens of clients, active clients in our containers, from one-on-one to group to whatnot, whatever, of live events. And it's really, really important that I manage my energy. My energy has to be clean. I have to do my own healing work in order to hold others in healing. And I have to take care of myself. Maybe more than most people, I recharge a lot by myself. I need that. I need that time because I'm a deep reflective type, but also it's what's required when I give so much of myself and hold so many other nervous systems in the healing work. And that's like a huge part of my self-care practice. So this looks like going to bed earlier. Eating more paleo has been something God has shared with me, cutting back on alcohol that'll really sharpen my mind, and exercising more. I don't know about you, but it tends to be one of the first things that go for me when I'm busy, is like, I don't have time for that, or let me just get through one more email, and then all of a sudden you miss your window for working out. I always feel better when I work out, and this is part of my preparation for being in that holy seat, to be able to handle, what comes my way, to be the vessel. Number 6, I reduced external input to hear him more clearly. So I only have a couple of mentors, literally 2 right now. And I have lots of friends in this space, lots of colleagues, if you will. And sometimes if, you're being vulnerable and you share something with a friend, or like, hey, like, if you want some input, like I have a guy, or I'd love to offer you something if you are open to hearing it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not open to hearing it. There's been times in my life I've been too open to hearing it, and then what it does is it causes mind drama and confusion. And I liken this to trying to follow a diet or an eating protocol, but you're also simultaneously reading about why that one protocol that you're following is not working. And then you're like creating evidence for why it doesn't work, and then you're causing mind drama and confusion, right? It's like following a paleo diet, but then reading all about like why you should be eating 100% of a grain diet or something. It's just very contradictory advice, and that will happen naturally when you follow strong-minded, powerful mentors. They will have a view, they will have a belief system, they will have specific values, that attracted you there, but it may rub against other people that you might be listening to and causing a lot more mind drama than is necessary. So just reduce that and double down on the mentors that you have in your life. Like, listen more. Ask more. Like, tap them for resources, ask them for feedback. If it's somebody that you feel like points you back to your own inner awareness and intuition, and you feel like it's a true co-creation, that you're not like giving your power away, like double down on that mentor. And I even deleted TikTok because I was like, this is an absolute waste of time. What am I even doing here? I feel so much better when I read before bed, or I just am able to like clear my mind and go to sleep. It was something I was mindlessly scrolling on, and I was recognizing that I was listening to all this external input. So I say no to unsolicited advice now, and I deleted TikTok. That has been such a huge blessing. So where can you do that? Number 7, second to last one. Sometimes I close my eyes and I'll just ask, what message do you have for me? And I'll open a book. It can be any book. It doesn't have to be a book about God. It doesn't have to be a religious book. It is so cool. I love this game because I'll close my eyes. I'll say like, okay, what message do you have for me? The book is closed. And then I like will feel it with my thumb where I feel called to stop. I'll take my pointer finger in my right hand and I will find with my eyes closed a paragraph somewhere on the page. And then I'll open my eyes and see where I was guided without fail. It's so amazing. The words I land on are always exactly either what I need to hear or something that's like, oh, right. Yeah, I needed that evidence. I needed to hear that again. Or like, ooh, this is okay. Yeah, like that's a different way of saying it, but I'm picking up what you're putting down. That's a fun game and it's spot on. I've literally taken action from doing that before, which sounds insane, but it always works out. And the last one, number 8, words carry energy, right? So whether they're spoken or they're sung, I love listening to worship music. If you don't know this, my company Elevate with Keri was inspired by Elevation Worship. Not only did Elevate with Keri feel like a big idea that had legs that any kind of consulting and coaching or products or experiences could be birthed out of, and it has continued to be true. It's proven to be true, but it's also about lifting other people up. I love lifting other people up. I love bringing them home back to themselves. I love when they realize how powerful they are and they remember who the fuck they are. And that's ultimately like at the core of my work, what I do. And Elevation Worship was on repeat for me in 2018. And that has only branched out into like all sorts of amazing music, not to find God, because again, he's already within me, but to remember and use the music as a recording. So I'll listen to songs over and over again. Like there's a song called New Wine. And I love playing the song when I'm really, I'm in like a brainstorming session and I'm like co-creating like new ideas with God. I remember that it's new wine. Like, oh, it's so cool. So I like to record that in, and it's just a remembering and an intentional brainwashing of myself. So music speaks to me, and maybe it does you. And so that's my number 8. But yeah, I got a lot of feedback on this email, and someone actually, my friend Gabe's that I brought up before, she asked me if I had read the book Living Fearless, which I never have. So maybe you have, and I haven't even looked it up. But I'm going to. And she said that this book is about, hearing God for your identity, and then several practices, apparently, like I talked about, in asking those kinds of questions from my newsletter and from this podcast. So I hope this episode finds you well. I'm sure there'll be more like this. It's such a high level, quick summary, honestly, of the last 7 years of my life. And I can honestly say life can be so good with God. And yeah, I just love God so much, and I honestly can't even imagine. I don't even know how I lived life without this. It kind of feels like finding a secret. It feels like I discovered some secret, and I'm sure a lot of people are much further ahead than me on this, but maybe this message is for you. Maybe it's for you if you're coming back to God and you're remembering again, or you're restoring your posture toward him. and you're being obedient to the call, which is hard to do because we're human and we have brains and our brain is scared of things. And we have lots of doubts and fears. And, the thing is he knows that. So we seek him to go further. And in the meantime, we just hope for a sight of shore ahead. So I hope this episode finds you well. And I'll see you next week on Literally First Class.
Thanks for tuning in to Literally First Class. If today's episode inspired you, hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps us reach even more incredible women like you who are ready to level up, lead with impact, and make first-class moves. I'll see you in the next episode, but until then, keep dreaming big and taking bold action.